Welcome back to the Weaving Magick podcast. I am your host, Tara Webb.
And I'm your host, Alyssa Lilly.
And today we're excited to have a fabulous guest with us. I've actually been on her podcast before, so we're actually going to link that at the bottom so you can go check her podcast out.
Check it out.
Yes. But Katerina, thank you so much for being here. You know, as we have each of our guests on, and you are our first guest for 2023, which is like, oh my goddess, that's just amazing. I'm excited.
Second year of podcasting.
Yes.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes, it's exciting. But yeah, so how do you weave magic into your daily life?
I love that question about weaving magic into your day-to-day life. And for me, it's the liquids I consume every day. So what I mean by that is every morning my ritual is to have a hot cup of water with lime. That helps balance my pitta energy. I'm very go, fiery energy right from the right when I wake up, right when I get out of bed. So that really helps to relax me. And I always have that hot cup of water with lime before I consume any food or any coffee. So after I've had that, then I move on to my coffee, which is coffee with a little bit of collagen, some rose powder from Anima Mundi, which I love. It's really good heart opening. And it's just, I don't know, I love it. It tastes really good. And then throughout the day, I always take moments to hydrate, drink water, drink tea. I always have my afternoon cup of coffee after I have lunch. And then in the evenings, it depends what's going on. Maybe I'll have a glass of wine with dinner, some tea after dinner, some ceremonial cacao. But every time I'm drinking something throughout the day, that's the one time of the day I really get to stop and be present, because I like to multitask. Sometimes I'm eating, multitasking, working on something. But when I'm drinking, I have to stop and be present, because you can't do anything while you're drinking. You're going to spill the liquid all over you. So that's really the one time of the day where I stop and only focus on the one task at hand, which is nourishing my body with whatever drink I have in my hand in that moment. So that is how I weave those little magical moments into my day.
What do you have right now?
About it that way, but that's so true. Yeah.
What drink do you have right now?
It is. I have some tea, some throat coat, so I can I don't have to clear my throat during the episode. But this is tea right now. Just throat coat, which is really good.
I'm curious.
Also, not sponsored, but Anima Mundi is amazing. Tara and I also have so much Anima Mundi products.
Yes, yes. I just got, I did some Black Friday shopping with them. I got the womb tea, the matcha tea, and then more rose powder.
Of course.
My favorite is their
rose chai or
like the chai that has the collagen powder and that kind of thing, and their mucina. I don't know if that's how you mucina. That. I don't know if it's a placebo effect, but it's supposed to bring like intense like happiness, like a dopamine one. I'm in love with that one entirely. We will also
putting that in the chai and the oatmeal that I make for breakfast is my favorite.
Yes, that's a game changer. But I'm curious, being pitta, how do you feel like being intentional with your coffee and that kind of stuff? I know pittas can run so hot, like coffee can actually irritate them. Do you think being so intentional as you're like sitting there and not rushing around, not like multitasking while doing that it helps the coffee actually remain stable in your body?
I think so. I definitely, because I'm drinking it with intention. I'm not drinking it just to get that caffeine to get going. I'm drinking it. It's warm. It warms me up in the morning. I have my collagen, so it's not just a cup of coffee. And I'm also intentional with the coffee I do buy. It has to be organic, rainforest certified, that it's not for me just not to shame Dunkin' Donuts, but it's not some, like high intensity sugar drink. I also don't have any sugar in my drink. It's really, it helps nourish. And then I think by having the hot water with lime, that offsets that pitta energy, because lime is for pitta. I think lemon was for either vata or cough. I can't remember, but I know lime.
Which is fascinating to me, because I feel like the coffee and the lime are both really acidic. I don't know.
Lime is actually less acidic than lemon, because lime is more of the, because lime would be like the things that people use in products to help them remain like as a preservative kind of thing. And so they like dry it out and they make it longer lasting.
I might try that. I used to do warm water with lemon, and it was causing so much like acid. Because I'm also, my digestion is very pitta, and so I just do the warm water and maybe a little bit of honey, and I found that was working better for me.
Well, yeah,
definitely try lime.
Mm-hmm. And I think also the fact that you add collagen to it adds like that soothing effect, and it's building up your body versus the draining. And yeah, the fact that I don't know if you know about coffee having mold in it, mold spores in most coffees.
Yes.
It's really gross.
It can.
Don't ruin coffee for us, Tara.
I miss coffee. I had coffee today for the first time in a very long time. And it's one of those things that I enjoy being able to take it now when I want it versus, okay, I need this. Because, you know, when you're reaching for it, when you need it.
I'm a slave to it.
I feel like you've gotten better, though. Like you're not as...
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah, I definitely am not a slave to coffee anymore, but I used to be.
Oh, I thought you said I'm a slave to it. I was like, but you're not anymore.
No. I said I hate feeling, like, I hate that feeling of being a slave. No, I've cut the shackles. I do still drink coffee, but I do it more intentionally, kind of like you were saying with collagen, or I love Enema Mundi's herbal coffee, which is really nice, or like a cacao, like coffee mix from Rasa, which is really nice. So
yeah, I feel like when we're reaching for an intention, our body responds to it better. So I love that reminder.
Well, and I love the point that you made too of just like you have to be present when you drink, and it never even occurred to me, but that's so true. Mm-hmm. So true. And
the amount of times I spill something. Where when... it's like I spill something.
Trying to multitask. Like,
Yep.
The only thing I can multitask while I'm drinking is listening. Like I can listen to you talk while I'm drinking, but that's about it.
No, exactly. No. So it's those little moments that really bring you presence.
So how would you say, besides that, like what is your kind of schedule throughout the day to where you're able to have those moments to be even more present? Because I know you work from home while also like you go different places, being an architect and that kind of stuff. So what is that like for you, being able to work at home, but also find the balance that you need, right? Because I feel like it's difficult when you're working from home. You're just constantly like, I have to work, and like you're off work, but you're home. It's the same setting.
No, absolutely. No. So I am a licensed architect in the state of California, and I do also go into the office and work from home. It's kind of become a little bit of a mix right now. And of course, I'm also at job sites all the time, visiting job sites, seeing how projects are going. And so creating a sort of balance, especially when I was also studying for my architecture exams, is finding a routine and finding just a schedule to go by. I also love to color code my schedule and my tasks, and making sure that I give myself the time. I don't push myself, spread myself too thin. And one thing that also helps is bulking time in. I know I'm the most productive in the mornings. The mornings is when I get most things done. So when can I'll take a moment when I get into work or when I start working to answer emails, to look through my to-do list and make sure I have all the tasks for the day set ahead. So I'm kind of preparing myself for success already in the morning rather than scrambling throughout the day. What can I do? What do I need to do? Is making that list and focusing on the tasks at hand. And my energy levels in the afternoon, I could call it quits at 2:30 and just be done, but I do work till 5. So I know to give myself in the afternoon tasks that don't have too much, not like thought, but it can be doing drawings, just putting on some music and getting into AutoCAD and just drawing, or reviewing shop drawings, or things, or maybe going to site visits in the afternoon, things that don't take too much, I guess, of my brain. So that's kind of how I design my day and make sure that I get the hardest task done in the morning.
What do you do to prepare yourself for that in the morning? Like, what is your
I love to-do lists.
To-do list, okay.
Pre-work. To-do lists, and one of the most important things is having a clean desk. When I come in first thing into my office or my workspace at home, is always having a clean desk. And that means the day before, cleaning off the desk. So when I come in the morning, I'm not spending the first 5 minutes of my day cleaning, organizing, figuring out where everything is. I've already done that ahead of time. I'm also a big Post-it person, Post-it notes. So I do lay out tasks in front of me for the next morning with Post-it notes. Don't forget to give this to this person. Don't forget to, scan and copy this, all of that to keep myself organized, but especially having a clear desk, because I do kind of dabble in Vastu Shastra, which if you have heard of Vastu Shastra, so yes and no. So I'm sure you've heard of Feng Shui, which is kind of from ancient China. Vastu Shastra is actually older. It comes from India. And while Feng Shui has to do a lot with laying out furniture in a room, Vastu Shastra has to do with placement of certain rooms throughout the house. Where do you place certain windows to allow positive energy into your home, whether you're looking for positive energy for your health or abundance. And so Vastu Shastra, it's kind of a science of architecture. It's a sister it's like a sister science to Ayurveda, and so in astrology, and so it all kind of matches, in that realm. And so with Vastu Shastra, I really want to focus on getting positive energy into my workspace. That also helps me create success on whatever tasks I'm getting done or my productivity. And that really starts with having a clean desk and also making sure my surrounding space is clear of any negative energy and negative things. So sitting by a window as much as possible, working, by the window, those are things I can tap into in Vastu Shastra for, productivity.
I adore that as well. I need to look into this.
You can check out my podcast. I definitely dive into little things about Vastu Shastra. But Vastu Shastra, what I love about it is it takes two of my passions, architecture and yoga, because I read this one quote and I wish I could have ownership of it, but it's Vastu Shastra is really yoga for the home, because you're balancing the elements of the home and you're allowing positive energy. And by placing certain things, where they should go, whether it's windows, whether it's how you're seated, which direction you're facing, all allows you to hone in on this positive force around you, which can, bring you whatever it is that you're looking for.
And I know architecture wasn't our plan for today, but I want to touch on it just a little bit, because I used to dabble a little bit, like late high school, early college. I love architecture. I love designing. I love looking at the placement of rooms, and just, it's totally resonating with me and bringing my inner teenager so much joy right now. What is your favorite style of architecture? Because I've loved traveling across the country. Like I lived in New Mexico for a while and seeing like the stucco, and then also like the deep Gothic cathedrals. I'm just curious on what your favorite type of architecture is.
No, absolutely. My favorite, so I work in residential, so I definitely hone in on, home residential styles, but it would have to be like a Spanish Mediterranean style. So I live in Southern California, where we have a lot of that. And I don't know what it is, but
it's just so stunning.
It's so beautiful. It looks luxurious. It could be an old Mediterranean shack, but the way the clay roofs are, and you have the stucco and maybe you have some cracks, it looks just like luxurious. I don't know what about
warm
it is.
And inviting. I miss New Mexico so much, and that just looked like going downtown, and even still seeing that kind of structure is amazing and beautiful.
No. It's like New Mexico is on my list.
You gotta go. Santa Fe, let me tell you, that's the place to go.
Awesome.
It's like it's built with nature for sure, instead of being taken away from nature. You can see all aspects of the world. Which is so
crazy for desert areas like that, because there's not a lot of nature other than like cactuses, but the way that they utilize the nature that's there is just incredible.
No, using natural elements, especially in what we're moving forward with in art, in architecture as an industry too, just the sustainability aspect of it, and using renewable materials, which is also something important, is having natural materials in your home, because we are so surrounded by, plastic and just, there's chemicals and stuff in the paint and the adhesives that has our carpets on. There's so many negative things around you in the materials that you're sitting on.
Even
so
the
having,
wood.
Natural.
Even the wood has been pre-treated.
Yes.
It's so wild.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's when you get into the toxicness of construction and what it was even years ago, not to go on a tangent, but it's mind-blowing. No, you definitely
welcome tangents.
Well, good. But yeah, it is. It's, and that's something I want to do, in the future with I would love to have an architecture firm, and that's kind of the goal I'm working towards next. And definitely being cautious of the materials you specify, because they have such an effect on the built environment around us.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious your thoughts on, at least I see a bunch of posts nowadays comparing, how old architecture used to look like when we used to build things and it, the beautiful archways, and like you see some in the UK of the, I don't know what they're called, the poles where it's like blocking certain things, or like
the pillars.
Like this, or the the phone booths, like just things like that, right? And then you see now how it's the more new age, almost minimalism, and it's just all very flat. Do you see a change coming to where it's shifting away from that, or is that more like East Coast, West Coast, kind of thing?
I definitely see it going more towards that modern, clean-cut, contemporary look. But what's interesting is I read an article maybe 2 years ago on how there's all these beautiful homes that are being designed, clean, contemporary homes that look amazing on photographs. But when you're in them, it's like you're sitting in like a hospital. Everything's so sterile, so white and clean. And, you want to bring that homeness, that homey feeling back. You want to be able to say, it's okay if I put this glass on this table without a coaster. Like, it's not going to ruin the aesthetic of the home. So I think it depends. Residential is still, that homey feeling. The firm I work for, we don't really do contemporary, but some people like it. Some people like that look of it's just this clean, modern, it photographs well. And I think that also goes to say with, you have, Instagram and TikTok and social media, what's a good background for the space, for whatever content you're creating. So things maybe photograph well. But as a whole, how I've seen things change, because I'm in residential, I'm not too much in commercial, but you see it in commercial. Commercial is clean, slick, minimalism. But there is an architect, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, who said less is more. And sometimes less is more by keeping it that modern, clean look. So I think it's definitely more of a personal preference on which way you go.
And I think the generations coming up behind us, from what I'm understanding, if you use the idea of like the millennials loving the boomerang effect on Instagram, and like we have to have the perfect Instagram photo, let me take a picture of my food. And all of the Gen Zs behind us are like, that's cringe. Like, we don't care. Here's just a real picture. We're going to take a picture. It doesn't matter how it looks. They're becoming more of like it's just the real life moment. Like, they don't have to have as much of the picture perfect kind of thing that we've been almost programmed to for so long of like, I have to look this certain way and show up this certain way. I mean, even Alyssa and I kind of plan our colors every now and then. Like, it flows, and that's a good thing. But also sometimes we can easily get stuck on like, oh, we don't look good in these colors together. Let's change. Like, let's make this to where like it can be almost too much. And so I'm curious, like, as things shift with the generations, because I feel like the ones below us just, they kind of get it in a different way, really. Like, I know my kids are just way more there than I ever was.
They're very, the new age term that I feel like the younger generations are more woke than I was at that age, for sure. I love seeing just how, I don't know, because I feel like you were talking about that social media point about how, they just want to take pictures in the moment. That's how social media started. Like, that's what it was. And then it became cringe because you wanted to like curate this perfect, beautiful version of your life instead. And now we're going back to, okay, I'm tired of this marketing. I'm tired of people lying to me. I'm tired of feeling inadequate because you're curating your stuff. So here's what the real is.
Especially when we had, like 2-3 years of that's all the online content that we had because we had to be, sequestered due to the pandemic. And like,
I'm programming that because like it's when you go to all these marketing classes and things, it's like your Instagram feed has to be this beautiful curated feed and you have to have the bright pictures in front of it and everything has to be on theme. And it's like, people want to see how diverse you are. They want to see what you're really going through. They want to see the vulnerability because that's what people relate with versus this perfect image of what life is.
Mm-hmm. And Katerina, do you think, as we say with commercialism, it is, very slick in some ways. It's, they're kind of flat. Not all of them, but some is. The one thing I tend to see a lot with residential is a lot of the houses looking the same and being like in those groups, and it's, the neighborhoods. And what I like is the idea of like, we're a circle instead, and we can branch off to this circle, like that kind of thing. Is it easier with like the Mediterranean Spanish style that you're working with for it to be more creative and also fit in? How do you do you see that really where you are, I guess?
So I call those homes cookie cutter homes because it's a cookie cutter and it just repeats and repeats. And living in Southern California, in Orange County specifically, a lot of our towns, the town I grew up in here, it's a cookie cutter. Everybody, you've got 4 models in one neighborhood and you're either model 1, 2, 3, or 4, and they all just maybe change a little color. So where I'm fortunate is I work in Laguna Beach, which is a beautiful coastal town, and we have a lot of custom homes, and people want to invest and really take the time to, first off, bring their property value up, of course. At the end of the day, it is about the money, but also to really just hone in on whatever the style is of the home and elevate it in a way that it's unique. So there's definitely a difference between you can work at a firm who does the little cookie cutter homes, and I feel like, there's a discussion about it in the architecture world of, is that architecture? Because you've made a model and
copy and paste.
Exactly. There's no uniqueness to it. But where I'm fortunate, like I said, we do custom residential, so we are customizing it to whatever the owner's needs are, to whatever their daily life is. And one beautiful thing I've noticed is a lot of our clients plan on having this be their forever home. And that's a fun project to work on, is when you are in your forever home. So you are going to be in this home forever. How do you plan for that? How do you, maybe the owner wants to give it to their family. So it'll be a multi-generational story. It's a home for them. And that's one of the reasons I also got into architecture is I love the idea that I am creating a home for someone, and you can't I don't resonate with that in that cookie cut, the cookie cutter experience, the suburbia. I think there's conversations, did suburbia kill architecture? Because in the United States at one point in the 50s after World War I, their population grew, suburbia grew, all these towns, especially in the Midwest too. I went to school in Chicago, so we really looked at a few suburbs in the Midwest they just spread out and they grew, but there was really no like architecture to it. I mean, there was the design, the layouts of the town, but it's all very dystopian almost, I would say.
How did what came first for you, architecture, or you're going to have to remind me how to say it, Vastu
Shastra.
Vastu Shastra. Which one kind of came first for you, and like what led to the other?
So I have wanted to be an architect since I was 10 years old. So I knew nothing about yoga and nothing about anything. I wanted to be an architect. And how that started was I was sitting in English class, and we were reading some poem about a man in his cottage, and I was like, this is so boring. I'm just going to draw what this man, like what his cottage looks like. And I did what now I know is a section cut. So it's a cut through the home where you get to see an elevation. So I got to draw where his fireplace is. He's sitting watching the fireplace. I drew bookshelves around him, and I created this atmosphere. And I thought, wow, this is so great. Like I just created this home for him. And so I started getting graph paper and designing my own dream homes. Of course, they included bowling alleys, swimming pools, movie theaters, you name it. I designed it, and I thought, this is amazing. This is the greatest house ever. And I just knew I wanted to be an architect. And so I went through middle school, high school, then to college in Chicago at Illinois Institute of Technology, just a small little private school in South Side of Chicago. And continued. It was a 5-year program. And then I worked in Chicago for 2 years, wasn't too fond of the winters. So I decided to move back to California. And it was here in California where I was starting to go through my architecture exams. And the process is very rigorous. There are six national exams you have to take. They all kind of equate to, everybody's familiar with the bar exam that the lawyers have to take. It's like taking 6 bar exams, essentially. So it's a lot.
That's wild.
And and nobody knows, which is amazing. And how hard it is to become a licensed architect.
I can just go to a house. I'm fine. No.
Yeah, no, it's not that easy. No, you have to pass these 6 exams. There's a 7th one I had to take because I'm in the state of California. But it was during these exams I kept failing. And it's really hard to go into work every day where you're successful at what you're doing and start taking exams that are supposed to get you prepared and licensed for what it is that you're doing, and you're failing. And there was just a rough time I had. I had failed 4 or 5 exams in a row. And I saw actually Sahara was giving a talk. This was in 2018. Sahara was giving a talk in LA, and I had kind of been following her because the previous year I had gotten my yoga teacher training certificate, and we were talking about Ayurveda. And so as I was in the Instagram world, I came upon Sahara's posts. And so she was giving a talk in LA, and this was pre her Dharma Coaching Institute, everything, but she was already honed. She really has a knack for finding out what your Dharma is. And so I went to her talk, and she was talking about, what are things that you love and how can you combine your interests so that you can have them, as a job and as a way to provide, means for yourself. And and I don't even know if she used the word Dharma. And so she had us write down on a piece of paper, what are things that you like? And so I put, I love architecture. I want to be an architect. And I love yoga. I'm like, what am I going to do with those 2 things? I'm going to design yoga studios. And as I just kind of sat with it, I thought, let's just see what comes of it. And as I continued, being in the world, the spiritual world, the yoga world, Vastu Shastra came up actually through one of Sahara's videos or something along one of her platforms. And I was like, what is Vastu Shastra? And I started to learn more and more about it. And I thought, this is it. This is a perfect mix of what I love. I love talking about the elements, the water element, the air element. I love architecture. And now here's something that combines 2 of my passions into one. So I have actually Sahara to thank for introducing me to Vastu Shastra.
I love that.
Don't you love how the universe just trickles things out for you to find your path? It's so beautiful.
It absolutely is. I am so grateful that it has led me to where I am today.
It makes me want to go through all of the Vedas and see what other things are out there, because we hear about Vedic astrology and just how uniquely different it is from Western astrology, and obviously Ayurveda that we've talked about, all the many types of yogas that we really don't know about. We only really hear about yoga asana. And we had, someone on the podcast recently that Haley, who talked about multiple types of yoga, and we don't hear about those. And so it makes me curious because this is ancient India, towards the very beginning of civilization, or so we know, that has just these things that really help form your way of life. And I think it's just beautiful and something that we don't realize is already out there that we're needed.
No, absolutely. And Vastu Shastra goes into, feel like I've skimmed the top layer of it. There's just so much more. And so one thing is in Vastu Shastra is you look at the elements, the planets, and also deities. And so where I've been focusing is on just the basic level of elements. So you have 4 quadrants in a home, or 4 quadrants. So imagine you lay out your floor plan wherever your home is, and you divide it into 4 pieces, 4 quadrants in the direction, north, south, east, and west. And so you have your northeast quadrant, which is governed by the water element. And so whenever you are working on what is represented in the northeast quadrant too is abundance and prosperity. And so if that's something you want to invite into your home, you want to make sure that you bring in anything with the water element into this space. And so, for example, in our northeast quadrant of our home, my husband built a fountain, and that is a water element and a water quality. And it's amazing to see when you bring in these elements into this space, especially abundance. I know we all crave abundance and prosperity. because it fuels whatever we want to do in life. And it's amazing, once we put the fountain in, we have gained abundance. I received a $1,200 check after I took the time with good intention of, putting water elements into the northeast quadrant. And then the southeast quadrant is governed by the fire element. So going back to architecture, it's good to have the kitchen in the southeast quadrant, because that's where the range is, the oven is, that is the heart, the heat of the home. The southwest quadrant is governed by the earth element, so that is very grounding. So if you can put in anything grounding into this area. And then you have the northwest quadrant, which is air. So any sort of air elements you can move. So there's just all these layers in Vastu Shastra of elements that you can hone in on certain areas of your home that govern, when you're designing a home from scratch, where could you put certain rooms? But what I like to talk about also on my podcast is how can you use Vastu Shastra principles in your life when you are renting an apartment, which is what I am. I don't own my own home. So can you, I'm not going to tear down the wall behind me because Vastu Shastra says I don't have to have a wall here and I need the energy to flow and all this. So there's definitely principles and things you can hone in on. And it's incredible how much it has changed my life. And when I'm looking for something, I look into Vastu Shastra and figure out how can I get this energetic flow into this space for what I need. But I also do it with good intention, which is really important. Not greed, especially with abundance.
I was going to say I need to learn more about this, and I'm going to go check out those episodes on your podcast. We'll link them in the description below, because I don't know, especially working from home, I feel like it's so much more common now. And I feel like it's just even more important because we're not getting as much movement. We're not getting out as much. And I've been working from home for, like 4 years now, which is crazy to think about. And I am home all the time, and I never even stop to think about how is the energy running through my home.
And that's something that we definitely want to talk with you more about, of going into 2023. You're here, and how we can bring those intentions and those thoughts and that kind of stuff into our home. But before we do, I have a question for you. How does that change, or does it change if it's a 2-story home?
So 2-story home, there's certain things that can change it. For example, you should not have a bathroom above your dining room, because, which we have in our apartment. I know, you start looking right, you're like, do I have
hold on.
Our master bath and our guest bath is above our dining room and living room, and there's nothing we can do about it. But it means, so the dining room represents, you want that to also be kind of in the southern southeast quadrant of the home, which is representing health, because the dining table is where you nourish yourself. It should be near the kitchen, right? Because you have those two spaces that work in unison together to provide you with food, to provide you with the energy you need to do tasks every day. And so you're not supposed to have a bathroom above there because of the leakiness of the plumbing fixtures shouldn't go above the dining room space, and that kind of creates negative energy. So things, it could be a 3-story home, 2-story home, 1-story home. It's once you start stacking certain spaces above you, that's where you can get negative or positive energy. So it can affect, it definitely, having a 2-story home can affect the energy coming in.
And how can you not fix it, but how can you advert some of that if you do have those things? And obviously you can't change it to, you're renting, or you have bought the home, but it's already, you don't want to go.
It's also, we're not going to tear down the whole house to move the bathroom.
No. And even to remodel and tear down, you do have to be conscious of it, because you're all of a sudden disrupting the existing energy of the home. So going in with an aggressive remodel might not be the answer. And so adding in... I
like how you said that, aggressive, because it's true. That's how it can feel to the house.
It can, and it's disruptive to your day-to-day life. You now no longer can use that space. So of course you want to do it with good intention. And I see it every day with clients. We do remodels, and your whole life is upended because now you can't be at home. You have to rent a home, or you can only, live in one part of your home. So definitely remodels. Yeah, that's not always the answer to everything. But for example, we are renting, and so we can't paint the colors of the walls either too, which is, I love bringing in color. I feel like that's one of the easier ways and very like applicable ways you can balance the space, because what you want to do is you want to balance it. And so there's certain ways you can balance by bringing in color. So for example, if it's in the southeast quadrant of the home, you have like reds and oranges. So that's the kitchen space. So you can bring in some colors. And so because our dining room is in the south and southwest quadrant of the home, that's also like reds and browns are the colors of that space. So we have flowers on our dining room table. I always try to hone in on some red colors if I can, just to kind of balance the energy of that space. But what's an interesting story about our dining room and our master bath is we had a leak in our master tub for much longer than I want to admit to. And we started noticing the drywall in the dining room was starting to crack. And I thought, I was in the midst of exams, there was COVID, so we couldn't even have people to come in and work. And the leak got bigger and bigger. And in Vastu Shastra, when you have a leaking plumbing fixture in your home, it signifies your leaking finances. Finances are coming out of the home. And I was hit with a very big medical bill at about that time when it got the worst it got. I also got a almost $10,000 fine due to a retirement transfer, which I won't get into, but it was just all these negative, and I just felt like I had high credit card bills and just things were out of control. The moment we fixed the leaking, that they took out the drywall, they fixed the tub, it was the overflow, so water was flowing and then it was not catching anywhere and then it was leaking into the drywall. The moment we fixed it, that medical bill went away, literally. I never saw it. And the $10,000 got reversed. I didn't have to pay anything. And I had a few months of successful savings. And it's wild. I mean, my husband's still just like speculative. He's like, it wasn't that. I'm like, no, this is it. We changed the energy of the home just by, fixing.
But also,
drainage.
Let's not test the theory.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, exactly. No. And then we had another leak actually, we had 3 leaks at the same time. That was one of 3 leaks. But there was a leak in our lower bathroom toilet. The seal was getting worse, and there was a leak. And I got hit with, there was another financial issue then too. So it's been tried and tested. There's no.
It is what it is.
Exactly.
It's like the idea we have money on our altar that we give to the kids for like their chores, and then we put it back. And if they buy something, then Justin will pay for it, and they give the money back to the altar. And one time, Justin, I think I was in Miami, I think, wasn't I? Or
I remember this.
Not Miami.
I try to bring up the story.
It's whenever I was, Alyssa and I had met for the first time in Colorado.
Oh, yeah, Colorado, yeah.
And Justin didn't have any money in our account at the moment or something, waiting for something to come in. And I don't think he even mentioned it to me, but he grabbed the money off the altar to go eat. And let me tell you, the amount of crap that came from this came and this bill and all those kind of things, because we took from a space that we normally didn't in that respect. And so then we put it back on and we doubled it. And we went out recently and we're like, okay, we need cash for this. We don't have a chance to go get cash. We took some and we were looking at the altar being like, we will repay this very quickly and double. We will double this. So that when everything was fine, because I think we established that connection. Came back and
the abrupt.
Yes. Came back and we doubled the amount that's on the altar. We don't use all of it, but it's there, and it's here's the abundance right in front of us. But yeah, it was an abrupt thing of wait a minute, where is that? What happened? And when you mess with those energies, it just, you can't explain it, but you're right. It does something.
No, absolutely. And it's doing that with good intention, because you bring the positive energy into it. Like when I was saying, if you wanted abundance and you tried to, artificially add water elements into the northeast quadrant of your home with greed, because you're like, I want money, you're not going to get it. When you do so, when you take the time, and my husband created this beautiful fountain, and we've loved, working with it, and we've decorated, and it's got the seascape, and it's amazing. You're putting positive energy, so of course you're going to get positive energy back. It's an exchange of energies.
You get what you put in.
Exactly.
We did an abundance jar whenever we were still in Texas. And it was very much like, we want to pay this debt off and like that kind of stuff. And, that was our goal with it. And towards the end of the year, I was like, I don't feel like we're paying. I don't feel like it's working in the sense, that kind of stuff. And that was the same year that I found out I was pregnant. So we became an abundance of like an extra kid. And Justin learned how to make money in a different way that would then supply money to where we weren't always stuck with one check and, and like just repeating that every month. And so the abundance for us wasn't what we thought. It wasn't like you were paying off this, $10,000 thing. It was like, no, here's $10,000 worth of knowledge that you can now go and do this. And so it's very much of like, here's what we would like, but we're going to release it. Because abundance isn't just give me money. It's like, how else is it abundance of kids? Like, how else does that flow in your family? And one thing we do before we move into a house that I kind of make my husband do, but he also like does it because he sees it, is we always, after we've signed for the house, because being military, we're constantly moving, we will go in and I will clear the entire house. I'll, do what I can with that. This time I actually put runes on most of the walls facing outward. And then we're sitting in the middle of the house and each of us are, hi house, thank you, for us coming in, because you're coming into different energy that's already been there versus like you're building a new space. And so like, we appreciate you. Thank you for making this a home with us and like really establishing that connection with the home that's already been here through multiple families.
Oh, I love all this talk about manifestation workings. It's so insane, the energy work and the intention behind it. And you'll never, ever be able to convince my husband that this stuff isn't true, because Tara and I think it was with you, we did our first manifestation jar around the same time because we had talked about it and done some of it together. And then we like took it with our partner and finished our creation and intention. And we won a tractor for like $10,000 that year, which was insane. And I remember my husband was like, no, it's just coincidence. The family was like, it's just coincidence. And then we did another one this year. We did a little bag. I carry it around everywhere I go. My husband has one. He carries around wherever it goes. And I think this year we've tripled our income. And it's just wild. We literally sat down last night, was just talking about this, like, wow, we actually have brought in the abundance that we asked for and didn't even realize it. And it's intention is everything, y'all.
Yes, it is.
Everything.
While also releasing and allowing the universe to just provide in the way that it knows you need.
And I think that's why I resonate with the non-specific manifestation, because in my mind, and everybody's different. There are people who are really good with the specific manifestations. But for me, I don't want to put the universe in a box. I don't want to tell it how to provide me what I'm asking for. And I really just focus on, how do I want to feel and what do I want my day to look like once this comes true? And so like, I almost visualize a day in that moment in the future, like it already exists, it's already true. And I just focus on that. And I feel like that's where my manifestation magic comes from.
No, absolutely.
And for those, I don't know if we've talked about this previously, Alyssa, but for those who aren't quite sure what Alyssa's talking about, is within human design, there are certain arrows at like the top of your chart that signify like, it's better if you eat at a specific time every day, and it's better if you don't, like just those kinds of things. And so there's one specific arrow that talks about if you are a specific or non-specific manifester based on, because we're all manifestors, even if like, there's manifestor, generator, et cetera, we all have the ability to manifest. A manifestor is not the only one who can do that, right? So based on the position of this arrow, it tells you you're more likely to be a non-specific, which is like Alyssa, where it's, not, I want $10,000 and I want it to be this way and that way. Not that we really ever should be that specific, because the universe can provide, but Alyssa visualizes it, whereas I'm more specific. And it's like, I do see this up to like, I would like $50,000 a month kind of thing to start getting into that income. And I see this like
point in my chart was like one of the most mind-blowing points for me, because I feel like in the spiritual realm, you're taught to be super specific. Visualize the numbers in your bank account and calculate exactly how much money you want to get when you're talking about money manifestations, or like if you're trying to hit a goal, plan each step and write it down. And I'm just like, I can't. I don't know how I'm going to get there.
No, that's so true. I'm also a non-specific manifester. And when I realized that, it was like, okay, I can hone in on feelings. Like when I get to a certain milestone, this is how I want to feel. I don't know what the milestone specifically is, but it's more of the feeling too around you.
And it releases it too, right? Like you're able to finally just release this huge pressure and be yourself.
No, absolutely. No, it made me think of something, and I don't know if this will have to be cut out, or if you guys can do like an explicit episode.
We do explicit episodes. You're fine.
We are explicit.
So I know, and I don't know I think I've told my husband this, but I don't know. I know during one of the best times to manifest, and it's one of the times I'm most creative, is during an orgasm.
Yes.
Let's get into this. Yes. Right space.
You're in the space, and I wanted to manifest for some reason $7 million. It was specific, but I didn't say I want to make 7 million. I want my husband to make 7 million. I want us to make 7 million. Mm-hmm. And I started to hone in on this number during a few of my orgasms. And then, you kind of forget about it. And but I put so much energy into it. And it wasn't until maybe 6 or 7 months later, and my husband's a general contractor, he was awarded a project, and the budget was $7 million. And it was the biggest project his whole company had ever done. I would like to say that I played a small part maybe in there. Just a small part.
Don't downsize that. That's fucking magical.
So I do think I played a role in it, but it's exactly that I didn't have a specific, I want $7 million in my bank account or $7 million in my savings or what, in which I had no idea how this number would come, but 7 is my favorite number. And I thought, why not throw in $1 million? Billion seemed a little too far-fetched, but I'm like, let's do 7 million. And there you have it. Mm-hmm. I manifested it in a way, but it's that not specific.
Yeah.
And not forcing it too. I kind of just, I
see, when I tell my husband those things of like, it's best whenever it's an orgasm, he's like, yeah, let's go. Yep. Well, I don't care if it's true or not. We're going to do it.
No, the power.
It's enjoying life.
It is.
That's what it is.
No, yeah. The power you can harness in an orgasm is some of my best ideas, my creative ideas, my problem solving, whether it's something that's going on creatively or just at work or, I've gotten some of my best ideas in those moments. And I've told my husband too, sometimes I'm like, I need to relax. Can we I need an orgasm. Let's go.
I love it.
I love it so much. And I love when you do have an orgasm, when you start to really pay attention to your body and noticing how the energy just kind of moves through you. And there's different kinds. And so sometimes the energy is going to a certain spot, and it's always fascinating to be like, okay, why am I feeling that here today?
And also, it makes me tap into the idea of, orgasmic birth too, of how pain and orgasm are the same spectrum kind of thing. But I'm curious, Katerina, you talked about being non-specific. I'm just curious, what type of human design, I don't know what the word is, person are you?
Oh, if I'm a manifestor or a generator?
Yeah.
I can't remember for the life of me. I think I'm a manifestor. I know the non-specific and specific. I've gone back and forth. I need to tap back into that information. But yeah,
I do the same thing with human design. Sometimes I'm in it and I'm researching and I think it's amazing, and then I forget and go off on these other rabbit holes and don't remember anything. So I just know I'm a projector.
Because it's a tool, and it's not meant to be putting you in a box. It's just meant to oh yeah, that works in the non-specific specific. Hey, that works for me. And if it says that you're supposed to be eating at certain times, but that doesn't resonate with you, cool, drop it.
Well, and I also feel like as humans, our bodies and needs kind of change throughout time. So when I have things in charts that are you need to eat at the same time every day, well, I might not be in that season right now where that feels good in my body.
Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing, is I feel like a lot of things, even Ayurveda, there is stuff with Ayurveda that talks about, birth and being an AFAB and that kind of stuff. But most things are across the board, here's what it should always be. Pitta should always eat this somewhat, right? And you're imbalanced and that kind of thing. And your days roughly should look like this. And, AMAB's energy is 24 hours, like when they have their hits on everything, and ours is 28, 30 days, right? And so I really wonder on like, we're supposed to eat as AFABs based on our cycle, but you don't really hear that in Ayurveda unless you like specifically look in within the area. And I'm curious to like really dive into that more, as well as like human design, like those specific things. As AFABs, we change so much. Like we're not stagnant.
It's not even stagnant. And it's like we don't stay on this same plane. I feel like and it's assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth, in case you're wondering. But I feel like for AMAVs, that line, like reaching that thriving state of being is, maintaining this stability. And that works. That structure works. But for AFABs, it's such a cyclical. Words are hard today. Cyclical. Goes in a circle. That's the word. Goes in a circle. And there's just so many ebbs and flows. And even, 2 cycles that are 28 days long can be completely different from each other. Your needs shift. But I even think with AMABs, it does shift over time, depending on your age and where you're at in life. So it doesn't shift as drastically, but it does shift over time. And I just think it's important to remember. I know we've talked about this before when we get into human design and even astrology and all these different things. They're great tools to discover more about the universes within yourself, but it's also not a box to put yourself in.
No, absolutely.
I don't know where that tangent came from, but there you go. Drop the mic.
Well, and I'm curious, honestly, if like AMAVs, if it's like every 28 to 30 years instead of like,
I feel like that's a really long time.
But it is. But like, look at how they transition. Like, so like when a man hits 30, there is or around that time, there is a transition in like in who they are, and like, they're more successful, they feel like, and they can actually have families at that point, and like that kind of thing, right? I don't know.
That's true.
Should have thought. Anyways, the other question I have for you, Katerina, now that we're like, because I'm going to forget this one, is when you're looking, and I think this is something that reminds me of feng shui as well, when you're looking at directional, is it like when you're facing the house and it's this direction, or like based on when you're like looking down at it and like where it's lined out directional?
No, so the north-south face. So it's based off of like a compass. So when you have the house, like the north wall is the wall that's north, then the south. So it's in plan view. So it's like,
okay, so like when you're looking at the plan down versus,
view, yes,
okay.
Correct.
And so if like my door is facing out here for the front, north would be this way, right?
Correct, yeah.
Or
so it's facing.
I guess it wonders how you, like, when you're looking at the plans, if the door would be this way.
Well, north doesn't change, right? It's the same direction.
Oh, I see what you're saying, compass-wise versus when you're moving that. I see what you're saying.
Correct. And I only speak for the northern hemisphere. I have no idea how this all flip-flops into the southern hemisphere, because at that point, you have the south is where our north is. So that's a whole other thing. But in the northern hemisphere, yes, it's in plan view on compass.
Interesting.
Where you're facing north. Yeah, because the electromagnetic waves that are moving throughout the earth, and I want to bring up a good point. You talked about sitting where you're facing. The direction you sit facing can either help you or not help you if you're working on a task, for example. So one thing to think about is when you're coming to sit down and you want to be successful at whatever task you're working on, and you want to be productive and focus, it's very important to sit facing north or facing east. And this is because the electromagnetic waves are coming towards you from the east direction. And so what I want you to picture is you're sitting on a train, right? You're sitting on a train and you're facing the direction of travel. That's what happens when you're sitting facing east, even like northeast, because you are sitting in the direction of the travel of the earth underneath you, right? Because we're going east to west. We're moving east to west. And because the sun rises, right, in the east, sets in the west. So imagine then now you're sitting backwards on this train and you're in the opposite direction. So some of us can get motion sickness because you're facing the wrong direction of the direction of travel that the train is going at. And so when you sit facing east or north is, if you're working on finances or numbers, sitting facing north is very important, because that's, again, the northeast quadrant of the home. So you're actually kind of connecting within the wealth. East is good for creativity. And so it's in those two directions you want to sit when you're working on a task, when you're being creative. So right now I'm sitting facing northeast, which is when I like to study, when I like to, do my podcast, be creative, because I know I'm getting the optimal effects of the electromagnetic waves that are, you can't see them, they're not, but they're not as tangible, but they are tangible in a way where they do have that effect on you.
I literally just downloaded a compass because I was curious. My computer setup without any forethought is exactly northeast, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. That's great. You're set up for success there.
Hell yeah.
Which it wasn't originally. Alyssa shifted it to
No, I did shift it because I was facing this way. Mm-hmm. So that would have been west. Oh, I'm not good with directions. If this is north, it would have been southwest.
Southwest.
Complete opposite, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hold on.
Yeah, I had to visualize it in my head. Mm-hmm. Should have just pulled out the compass that I downloaded, but it's fine.
No, I love it. I when we travel, so I meditate every morning, and a good direction to sit facing when you're meditating is east, because again, you're getting those positive electromagnetic waves, and so I always have the compass with me when we travel or something, and I need to confirm, I have to sit facing east because I know I'm going to have the optimal meditation experience because of the way I'm facing.
I'm going to go buy a compass now. Carry it with me wherever I go.
It makes me think of the Pocahontas compass, because I've always loved that one with Miko having just the little one that looks like the little cracker cookie thing, but having that one right in your hand that just looks so old-fashioned, but just... you feel more connected, I feel to the earth and to the pool versus on your phone and here's other technology with it. I don't know, it just feels more grounding.
I love that you mentioned...
I just want a cool compass.
I love that you mentioned Pocahontas. That is the Disney princess I resonate with the most, and it's my favorite. I have so much Pocahontas stuff that I don't know if I should admit, but I love Pocahontas, yeah.
Which is interesting because I don't think you can find a lot of Pocahontas. I don't know. I go to the Disney store a lot and I feel like I don't see her
I feel like they try to minimize it because it being not a true story, right?
Yeah.
Based off
there is a lot of...
It is definitely a controversial Disney story.
It is.
And also one thing is the movie came out in 1995 and I had my 5th birthday was Pocahontas themed, which was my 5th birthday was in 1997. And now when I go on Etsy, I can find those same party favors and party plates and stuff, but it's considered vintage now. So that's also one reason you may not be seeing it is it's not Frozen. It's not, I don't know who the latest popular Disney stuff is, but it's
Moana.
Oh yeah, Moana. It's none of them. Pocahontas is considered vintage.
This is also a little tangent, makes me think of, I used to love The Sound of Music. That was my favorite musical. I acted in it. My dad showed because we used to watch a lot of Rodgers and Hammerstein's musicals and they were just, classic. And I don't know, The Sound of Music I could just watch over and over. But then when you actually go and learn about, this also reminds me of Toto. What's the movie?
Wizard of Oz.
Thank you. Those kinds of movies when you actually learn about with Sound of Music, the actual story behind her is not as true. And, she wasn't as kind of a person as what is portrayed. And so I have a difficulty in my brain of the truth versus this story that is fabricated that's still beautiful. Or if you look at Wizard of Oz, and I know this is a huge tangent of when you hear so much about the way that they were treated on set and the things that were going on set. I used to love Wizard of Oz, but I almost can't make myself watch it because in my adult brain is I see it. I can't hide and put blinders on anymore for those kinds of things.
No, it's the dark truths of things that we've, as a society, have loved. And when the other truths come out, it can, hinder the experience.
It's the childhood. Yeah, it's the childhood of things of being able to have the golden rose-colored glasses of it's nice to see, and then you grow up and you're no.
Well, it's even looking, not on a full, I guess we are going on another tangent, which I love these tangents, by the way, is even watching movies from 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And some of the, like, I love rom-coms. And we were watching My Best Friend's Wedding with Julia Roberts, which I think is now like 30 something years old. And some of the comments that are made, it's like, I know, it's like 25 years old maybe. But, like some of the comments and things that are made is just a whole nother world of like, you can't say that anymore. You can't do this anymore. And so finding out, even like you were saying from Wizard of Oz, like that was just another lifetime ago. Well, for a lot, like, yeah, lifetime ago of how things come up. And so, but yeah, we keep those rose colored glasses on to keep that childhood magic alive. But once you become an adult, you realize
you see through it. I know. I grew up on Friends. I feel like that's another one that is not socially acceptable in a lot of ways now, and there's a lot of controversy around it. And I even tried to rewatch it recently, and I was like, ooh, maybe I'll just do highlights because it gets a little cringy sometimes.
Even Gilmore Girls. Like, I really love Gilmore Girls.
I love Gilmore Girls, but I can't watch it again.
And it's also when people point out, because this is another small tangent. I have a question still, but this is another small tangent of, like, you know, we see this huge Wednesday trend of, like, you know, the goth and, like, those who are alternative and, like, how awesome they are. But yet still when people are in school and are goth and are, like, you know, very much alternative people, if they're artistic, if they're ADHD, whatever, they're not treated like with this huge of just, oh my gosh, you're amazing, right? It's different. And what were they talking about? There was one thing specifically that was in regards to that, though. What did you mention, Alyssa?
Oh, no, I don't know.
I know, I kind of lost it too. I was like, thinking about Wednesday. Wednesday's that like Addams Family girl, right?
But it was tied to something specific, and my brain like took the train without me.
I love when that happens.
Anyways, it's going to be bothering me for a little bit.
What was the last question that you had?
The last question is basically how you can look at what you're wanting to call in and really tap into with 2023 and apply that with your house, with your space, with like that kind of stuff to, you know, start bringing in that flow to redirect maybe something you didn't even realize was there, or maybe you're feeling it now kind of energy.
I think that's a great question, especially coming into the new year. And you can think one thing that can, or a few things that can really help with your home, especially, is if in the first month of the new year, you reduce clutter. Reducing clutter in your home, just overall in general, because clutter keeps this stagnant energy, this heaviness. We all have clutter. We all have that one junk drawer or junk closet, or
I feel called out. Yes.
That's somebody else's problem. But taking a moment to declutter. It's not like, you know, we have spring cleaning, fall cleaning. We all have those moments throughout the year where we clean, but taking a time this month to declutter a certain space. And if there's something you're calling in for this year, let's say you want to, you know, get better at cooking or become healthier. Take a look at your kitchen. How can you declutter it? Are there things that are old, things that are falling apart, things that are no longer serving you anymore? Take those out, because they're only causing you maybe not to want to spend time in that space. You don't want to cook. You don't want to clean, you know, be in that kitchen space, for example, because every time you look at, you know, you pull out this old frying pan, you're like, oh, it's so gross. So anything you can take out, reduce the clutter, because you'll allow this positive new energy to enter your space. And so whatever it is that you're calling into this year, you know, look at what part of the home can I gain positive energy from this? So like I said, you know, cooking, maybe you want to be healthier this year. Look at your kitchen space. If maybe you want to attract more abundance into your home. I love that you guys were talking about like your manifestation jars. And I do have an episode about abundance on my podcast where you focus on the northeast quadrant of the home and the water element and how you can bring all of the, you know, water element into that space. So looking at maybe the direction of the space in your home, there's, you know, the east brings in health and balancing that. So there's certain, you know, not to get too specific, but as an overall reducing clutter in your home is one way to absolutely bring in positivity and good energy flow into your space.
And I like a lot of different directions we could go in for a challenge, Tara.
Well, but I want to say really quickly, because whenever Alyssa and I have the podcast that talked about the episode that talks about, we're coming into the new year, but this isn't meant to be like a new year, new you. You're not changing everything about you. Choose that one thing, because changing one thing is going to progressively change other things, right? And so even though we are saying, for the most part, try to declutter your house, but also hone in on that one area, because that one area will trickle into other areas. And I think that's a really huge point of like, if you have the means to and are able to declutter your entire house, yes. But specifically, whatever you're calling in, let's focus in, because, when your mind's split multiple ways, it's not going to focus. And I remembered what I was going to say.
Yes, let's get into it.
Because about Gilmore Girls.
Yes.
And so when people point out, I've heard this recently, like with the whole Wednesday thing of like, she's alternative, and then we don't actually like those people in real life. You look back at Gilmore Girls and you see how Lorelai is like a very ADHD. And it's that feeling of like being jolted here, jolted there, like all this kind of stuff. And so seeing movies, shows, whatever it is with like that adult vision, you begin to see I see that in myself, or like you actually see those little intricate pieces that are more in society that like in the past be like, oh, this is really funny. She's quirky. Ha ha ha. You're like, oh, that's me. I don't feel like I'm quirky.
No, that is so true when you look at it as from the lens of an adult, and the more experiences you gain in life to change your perspective on a lot. It's actually funny. I read a BuzzFeed article this past week about, popular TV show characters, and now as an adult looking back on them, and Lorelai came up as, first off, she was a helicopter mom. She never let Rory grow up. She was always making sure Rory had the best. And then Rory ended up becoming kind of a spoiled brat. She never she didn't end up getting a job, nothing. There was no interest of hers once we got back to the 4 seasons, years later on, reunion kind of series.
Which is wild compared to like how she tried to be a different parent than her own parents.
It is.
That's kind of blowing my mind right there.
No, Lorelai has some ancestral healing that she needs to do.
Yeah. There's so much yes to that statement.
It's a whole other episode we could dive into on Lorelai and Rory and the Gilmore clan.
That's true. No. But yeah, as far as a challenge, because we issue a challenge for every episode we have.
Mm-hmm.
Issue a challenge. I like the way that you said that.
You must do this. Katerina, do you have an idea of like what to challenge the magic weavers in regards to like maybe coming into your space, or like really, I don't know, like adapting, or how to shift?
Maybe like what's that one step they could take to start that process?
That one step. No, absolutely. I think the one step, as I said, about reducing clutter, it can be overwhelming. I don't expect you to hit every room in your home and it's going to look, like a sterile contemporary home where I can't even put my glass on a coaster. But it can be as simple as starting with a drawer.
I have starting junk drawers.
Wow.
I don't want to talk about it.
Wow.
That's mine. I'm just going to share mine.
But even just tackling one and putting on good music, getting in the mood. And what I like to do sometimes with certain tasks that I don't like to do, and this helps with like my productivity, is I set a timer. And I say, I'm going to do this for 30 minutes or an hour. And so maybe if it's just too daunting for you to tackle whatever it is that this task of cleaning out this space, whether it's a closet, a cabinet, a drawer, a room, an entire room, or maybe it's a garage, give yourself a timer of a certain time that you're like, I'm willing to dedicate this much time, and then set the timer aside and just kind of be like, okay, there's nothing else I have to do in this present moment except this task. And you'll be amazed at how quickly the time will go by. And you'll be proud of yourself that you accomplished whatever it is. And it could even be 15 minutes. Just say, you know what, I'm going to spend 15 minutes, whatever I get done. You also don't want to get too into the project and then leave it and it be a mess. So do be mindful of that. But
look at this one thing I found. Look at these memories. That's me.
Yeah. Oh, And that's okay. Like, you have set that time aside to be able to not rush through it. Give yourself that moment. Look at this memory, it'll bring up good feelings. Hopefully, maybe you'll find something else, and it'll be a good experience. But if it seems overwhelming, give yourself a 15-minute timer. That's all. 15 minutes out of your 24-hour day. You can do it. You can clear something in your home. Take out the trash, maybe, that takes more than 15 minutes, but something like that. Something, maybe even a, shelf in the pantry, something like that. Throw away some old food, or your refrigerator. Just go through your refrigerator door and go, well, what's expired? It's as simple as that.
I love that challenge. Well, thank you so much.
I'm trying to think about how I can use timers for work, because I work really well with timers. I don't know why I don't use them more. So my brain went into a different space. But yes.
Probably because you have to actually think about creating the timer to do it. So do a sticky note to remind you to create the timer to do it.
I should do that. I have sticky notes.
There you go.
I feel like it would operate way better.
I love sticky notes. Like, sticky notes are... I have a whole study schedule for my exams that I use sticky notes. Like, that's a whole other topic I could go into, but I love sticky notes. Like, color codes,
we talked about sticky notes with someone that we know that was like, yeah, I sticky note my book. And I was like, if I sticky note my book, I feel like I'm like anxious and that everything's everywhere and I can't sticky notes. But I love that it works for people.
No, it depends. It depends on the size of the sticky. I mean, I'm not going to get into specifics. It also depends on the size of the sticky note. I have to have a little sticky note if it's a book, a big sticky note if it's like a big thing you need to work on. But there's a whole hierarchy of sticky notes.
There really is, yeah.
I mean, Katerina, I feel like you are the beautiful prime example of like a very well-balanced pitta.
Thank you.
How you feel like things need to be a certain way, but with some flow too. Like, it's very beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm a Pitta Vata, and I definitely go between the two. And I think it goes back to what we started talking about at the beginning of this episode is, I start my day with the hot water and lime, and then already I go into the day with intention of knowing my body needs to be balanced so that I can be at my best throughout the day.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, and we will definitely link everything and all the show notes for Katerina's podcast, and there's just so much we mentioned. Just check the show notes. Just check them.
Episodes, all kinds of stuff, more rabbit holes to go down. We'll see you there.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on.